Yes. So I, it's very funny being a Black American woman. I grew up in a lot of privilege, which is it's not what you normally see because it's not what we're normally allowed to see, right? So I grew up in a very white neighborhood. We were probably the only Black family in the 80s that lived in that neighborhood. There might have been two other Asian families and one Pakistani family, I think, that lived in the 400 houses, right? So massive neighborhood, but it was not very diverse. The town I grew up in was segregated even then in the 80s. So, you had like the Black side of town, the white side of town. I didn't know that I was different, had no idea that I was different until maybe high school when, kids would say, oh, you talk like you're white. And I didn't understand what that meant because everyone around me talked the same. So I've always carried myself a little bit differently, maybe quite naively. Um, I never thought that I would ever have any issues. And honestly, I haven't had many issues. It's mainly been comments that people have said to me, and I'll go through some of that. But what I really want to share is it's a funny story to me, a story that one of the first run-ins that I ever had with the LAPD. Um, and I'll give you a little bit of understanding about the LAPD. They are fucking scary. Excuse my French. Very, very scary people, to the point where I was at a football game, so massive stadium in downtown Los Angeles, 90,000 people. It was completely packed, and we won the game. And so, of course, they make the announcement, don't rush the field, which is what every college student does because, you win the game, you're excited, you're happy, you want to rush out to the field. There's hundreds of us, hundreds. And USC is a very multicultural school. So we're all races, all ethnicities, all varying backgrounds. A line of LAPD walked across the field, probably about 15, 20 of them. And I've never seen so many people do an about face so quickly. That's how scary these guys are, right? They're just very, very scary guys. We were taught just, don't engage them, look the other way unless you have an actual issue, but you just leave them alone. So my story, one night, I think I was just turning 22. So I was a senior. It was my final year at uni. And I decided to have probably the biggest birthday party that I'd ever had, the biggest house party that I was ever going to have. So I had a massive house party. Everybody I knew came. I invited the entire complex. We moved the furniture, we turned the lights out, the music was blaring. It was just massive and it was just going. There were people out the back smoking weed, all kinds of things that we probably shouldn't be doing. But, we did it anyway because we're at uni and we're having a good time and, we're celebrating. And at some point, I just hear this massive, whose house is this? And it was kind of like in the movie where you hear that scratch, the record scratch and everything goes quiet and everybody stops. And we look around and there are two massive LAPD officers standing in my living room. And no one moved. We all just stood there, just stood completely still. And someone kind of shoved me and I was like, shit, okay. So I walked up to them and, I kind of said, oh, hi, it's my house, it's my party. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, what kind of trouble am I going to get in? Kids smoking weed out the back and who knows what else was happening. And, he's like, do you know what time it is? And how dare you throw a party and you're being so loud, we can hear it from the street. Do you know the row has shut down? And for anybody who doesn't know what the row is fraternity and sorority row. And just like in the movies, fraternities throw these massive parties and they are just as wild as you see on the movies. And it was probably 3 or 4 in the morning at this point. So it was late. It was late and we were being very loud, but everybody in the complex was there. So we were like, who cares? So I kind of looked at him and I was just thinking, And so I said, yes, I know what time it is. And yes, it's my place. And I read his name badge. So he had his name badge on. And I distinctly remember this. I don't remember his last name, but I remember his name was Sam. And so I just kind of got really doughy-eyed. And I just said, Officer Sam, have you ever been 22? Do you remember being 22? Do you remember celebrating? And he immediately softened. And he just looked at me and he said, all right, just keep it down. But if we come back here, we're going to shut it down. And he walked out, and we all just kind of looked at each other for a moment and we sighed. Okay, that's good. We didn't turn the music up as loud, but we did turn it back on, and we partied until 6 a.m. So my story is about, we hear all of these stories, and they're true because I have seen it. I've seen some really negative stuff that the cops have done personally. And I think not all of them are bad. So I just want to be one of those voices that says, yes, I acknowledge the negativity that's out there, but there are some good ones. There are good cops out there. Every interaction I've ever had with a police officer has always been positive. Not to take away from the negative, because I have seen an officer with his foot on someone's head before. I have seen that, and it scared the shit out of me, but I didn't know what to do. And, it's 3 o'clock in the morning going home from uni. You don't know what to do. And they look at you and you just walk by. We didn't have mobile phones back then. There was nothing you could do. And like I said, the LAPD are very, they put the fear of God in you with them. And we're told this. We're actually told this. So I was an out-of-state student coming from Oklahoma and going to California. And the one thing they tell you is just don't engage with them, because they're mean, they're ruthless. The majority of them don't even live in LA County. They live outside the county. So they have this view of the people that live there in the county. So, we do fear them, but my experience has been good, me personally. And I just want to say, yes, we need to end police brutality, but we all need to do it together. We need to stand up together. So for those cops out there that are good, they need to take a stand as well. And they need to work within themselves to change, because that's the only way it's going to happen. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing it. Thank you so much for sharing
Worries.
it.
No worries.
At one point, I actually thought that you were going to say, you said the cops walked in and everyone got all tense. I thought you were going to say they were strippers.
Oh,
that would have been a
that's
a
different story. I have had that happen as well. That was a birthday surprise. And boy, was it a surprise.
Yeah.
But yes, so that's my good cop story, if you will, where we were scared, but it turned into be something not so bad, and we were able to party. I guess one of the things that I've experienced a lot being here in Australia, that I think for me personally is a huge enough is enough, is the assumptions that people make about you when they see you. I've had people ask me, what's it like growing up in the ghetto? Or, can I touch your hair? It's not normal. Or someone actually argued with me about being an American, saying that because I was Black, I couldn't be American. And I'm like, don't argue it. My family has been in America for 300 years. Of course I'm American, And it's not my place to explain to them why I'm American. They just need to accept it. And that's a huge thing for me, because that happens quite often. That happened just, a couple of weeks ago, where people argue my Americanness with me because of the color of my skin. And that's not fair. That's just not fair at all. So that's a huge enough is enough for me. Don't presume to know people based on what they look like. Talk to them, find out their story, but don't make assumptions, because that's one of the reasons we're in this mess, is that people make assumptions about people. They see someone, oh, they look scary. And it's like, you don't know that person. You don't know what that person has been through, who that person is. It's not fair to say, oh, I was afraid because someone just walked up or someone asked for help changing their tire. A few years ago when I was back home, a cop killed a man who was on the side of the road. He was a preacher and he was changing his tire, and they were like, I was scared. And so they shot him and killed him. And he was just asking for help. He'd actually called asking for help, So we need to stop making assumptions based on what people look like.